Crave was conceived as a way to deliver our strong educational mission and our membership's desire for their continued learning. Through the Crave series, our chapter will deliver webinars and virtual meetings to deliver timely and relevant topics that are affecting our industry today.
It's about the effort that we expend to connect with people. But you have an opportunity to see people, you have an opportunity to chat with people. We may not have an opportunity to have appetizers and share a drink with each other, but we stay connected, and that's really the most important thing.
Being able to work together and learn together in a new format, a new environment, really helped us take those pre-existing relationships and friendships that I had to another level.
CoreNet has taken the leadership in these kinds of conversations for years and years, and so we're delighted to have this long-term relationship with CoreNet.
I found the CoreNet to be a great community of dedicated real estate professionals, and what it means to me is it gives me a wider network of people with whom to share ideas, to derive the best learnings, to test and experiment with things that I'm working on.
This program is all about personal growth and becoming the leader that you want to be.
CoreNet has always led the way when it comes to supporting the professional development of our members. Our roundtable discussions, our education workshops, and our professional development programs are just part of what makes CoreNet so valuable to our members. It was critical for us to find a way to still be able to facilitate all of this. Crave has provided us the platform to be just as effective and to still provide that value to our members in a virtual environment.
CoreNet not only provides a platform for different groups to come together regardless where you come from in terms of organization, but really help each member to feel like they belong in this organization.
We have a diverse membership base, and you will find that members come from all walks of life and from all over the world. However, it's still an area of focus for us to improve upon and to embrace equity, inclusion, and diversity through increasing awareness and taking action, as we know this will lead to more success for the organization and for our members.
Hello, and welcome to this session of Crave titled Traffic Congestion and the Commute. This is brought to you by the Real Advantage Committee of CoreNet. My name is Laurie Burrell, and I'm a project manager at PES Associates. I'm also a member of the CoreNet Real Advantage Committee. Before we begin, I'd like to go over our agenda. We'll start with announcements and introductions, followed by the panel discussion, and then a short Q&A session. To ask questions, we please ask that you submit them through the Q&A window in the Zoom dashboard. For our upcoming events, we have the Young Leaders Professional Development Program application, which is due on November 10th. We also have the CoreNet Global Summit, which is being held in Seattle from November 7th through 9th. And then on November 19th, we will have our next Real Advantage Committee workshop, so save the date. You can follow CoreNet New England via Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And of course, we'd like to thank our corporate partners, our platinum sponsors, and our gold and silver sponsors for this programming. Today's discussion is about the current state of traffic congestion and the MBTA ridership levels compared with pre-pandemic levels. As you well know, many offices were set to either fully reopen or open in a hybrid model this past September, but however, due to the surges of COVID-19, that did not happen. Yet traffic seems to have come back. So what is different about today's commute? What is your commute going to look like going forward when we do all fully reopen or partially reopen? And how has the pandemic impacted Governor Baker's commitment to the transportation and climate initiative that would reduce motor vehicle pollution by at least 26%? Joining us today are Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver and MBTA General Manager Steve Poftak. Jonathan Gulliver is the Highway Administrator at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, having served in this role since May 2017. He joined MassDOT in 2009, and prior to accepting the position of Highway Administrator, he served as the District 3 Highway Director, responsible for the management and oversight of the state highway and bridge system of Central Massachusetts. Jonathan has over 2 decades of experience in managing complex state and municipal projects and holds a degree in civil engineering from Worcester Polytech Institute. Effective January 1st, 2019, Steve Poftak joined the MBTA as General Manager. General Manager Poftak, who previously served as the Vice Chair of the Fiscal and Management Control Board and as a Director of the MassDOT Board since 2015, comes to the T from the Harvard Kennedy School, where he was Executive Director of the Rappaport Institute of Greater Boston. Previously, Poftak was Research Director and Director of the Center for Better Government at the Pioneer Institute of Public Policy Research. Prior to that, he worked at the Commonwealth's Executive Office for Administration and Finance, where he managed the $1.3 billion capital budget, prepared the state's quarterly cash flow reporting, and monitored non-tax revenue receipts. Other experience includes service on the Commonwealth's Finance Advisory Board and Zero-Based Budget Commission. Poftak holds an MBA from the Olin School at Babson College and a BA in Political Science from Middlebury College. He's a Boston resident and has children who attend the Boston Public Schools. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Administrator Gulliver. Thank you for joining us today to speak with us about this trying topic.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you for having me here today. I'm gonna share my screen real quick, or I'm gonna try to anyway. So I have a very data-heavy presentation, but I promise I'm going to mostly just speak over these slides. So they're mostly here for props. So give me 1 second to get this going, and I should have it. This is always the fun of these remote environments here, but let's see. All right, hopefully everybody can see this. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what traffic's currently doing and where it's going. And what you see in front of us is some tools that we actually developed early on in the pandemic. You know, if there was a silver lining here, one of the things that the pandemic enabled us to do is really get responsive with our traffic and get on point. One of the things that was really critical in Governor Baker's approach to issuing some of the executive orders was understanding how people were reacting. So we developed a whole bunch of different tools to monitor in real time what people were doing, how they were traveling, where they were going. And that was in direct response to, again, making sure that decision makers had the right information in front of them. So where's traffic been? I think if you've been on the road recently, and by recently I mean in the last 6 months, you know that in many cases you're going to find that you have a lot of company out there by comparison to a year ago. And traffic volumes have definitely increased, but they're different. And what you're seeing here is part of our tools is looking at the greater Boston area and the PM congestion, and the AM and PM congestion. Here's the AM. You can see there's a lot of red here versus a year ago would have been a lot of green. This is PM, very, very similar story to tell. But this is where things get interesting. And I know this is a difficult chart for all of you to read, but one of the things that I want to really show over the next few slides is that even though traffic volume has returned, and in many cases does resemble generally the patterns that we had pre-pandemic in 2019, what we're seeing is that as it's been rebounding and as it's changing, it's changing. So it's different now than it used to be in a number of different ways that I'll get into in a moment. So here you can see this is kind of, yes.
I think the slides aren't moving. We're still on the first one.
Oh, okay.
All right, I apologize.
No, let me see if I can reset and get that working again.
Thank you.
Usually Steve is the one with these problems, so his
thought I'd let you get it warmed up early here. So
all right, can you
yes.
see the slides changing now?
Yes,
all right,
now they're advancing.
All right, excellent. So this slide right here, what this shows you is the basically from when the pandemic hit to current day, and you can see the red line and blue lines here are where things are changed, where the AM and PM peak and where things were changing over time. And you can see in this case we're pretty close to where we were at 2019 levels overall. All right. And did that just advance for you? You can see this? Perfect. All right. So one of the things that we track really closely now is the various times of day on a number of key roadways. We use these as indicators for overall health across our system. And we have people that monitor this every day. The way that MassDOT works is that we have people in our traffic division that use this for analytics, but we also have our Highway Operations Center, which is in South Boston. They actually have this data in front of them in real time and live. And what they do is they use a lot of this data to actually manage the highway. So they'll if there's a crash, if there's something else going on, a construction job, they kind of stand in as like dispatch, make sure that our staff, state police, others are aware of what's happening and they can get there. So what you're seeing here, if you're seeing red on any of these blocks, this is where traffic is now actually exceeding 2019 levels for certain areas. And you can see that 93 in particular is one of those ones that has traffic has bounced back and then some. But again, we're seeing in a number of these cases that it's different. And you can see there's a number of minuses here. That's the green, where things have really changed for that segment. And that again is because of the unsettled nature of where traffic is currently and how people are working. So here's another good slide that I like to show. We were talking about, if you had been paying attention to where we were going with things at MassDOT pre-pandemic 2019, we were talking a lot about our congestion issues in Massachusetts, and we were talking about flattening the curve back then, but it was not related to the virus at that point. It was how do we get some of these peaks out of our commute times? And you can see this is a pretty good example of how things have really shifted around, and that a number of these peaks that we had are nowhere near as severe. And in general, and again, I appreciate this is a little bit hard to see for everybody, so I'm going to try my best to describe it. In general, what we're seeing is that we now have a lot more local trips during the middle of the day. We have a lot more short trips middle of the day. So people are traveling at different times. And this is pretty indicative of what we see when you have a remote hybrid kind of environment where people have more flexibility in their workday, is that rather than jump in the car and sit with everybody on the turnpike at 7 a.m. every day, we see a lot more people that are getting in and going to a midday trip to the office, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then coming home a little bit early, more like a 2 o'clock, and beating the PM rush that they would normally see as well. But again, what we're seeing is that a lot of this stuff is coming back, and it's coming back quickly. So it's different, it's better in a lot of ways, but it's still very, very unsettled. And here's a PM of the same chart. So you can see here it's a little bit more extreme, and this is on Zakim Bridge. But again, if you had asked me 6 months ago before Delta hit and everybody was planning like a summertime return for businesses, I would have told you that we were really watching the period between Columbus Day weekend and Christmas to see where traffic patterns have settled in. That's not the case anymore. We're seeing that some of it is settling in, and that that people are developing a pattern, but our expectation is that that's going to change. Things have shifted by several months with many businesses. And I know many of you have been going back in the office. Right now, you may not have, depending on what time you're going, you may not have a heavy commute, but the novelty of going back into the office for now is probably going to wear off quickly for a lot of people once they start getting stuck in traffic. And again, I'll kind of go through these ones really quickly. This again is just showing that it's back or exceeding in many cases some of these roadways. And this is in Tobin, where we've had a lot of construction. We have a bus lane in that's been working really well. But and that's a strategy, by the way, that you're going to see more and more of. Is that we're exploring. This is going back to our congestion study. We're exploring a lot of ways to improve commutes for people who are looking to take the T. A healthy T is critical for a healthy transportation department in general, or transportation system in general. But for the highway division, having a healthy T is really critical for us, because we know when the T is not available, the only other choice you have is to get on the road, and we certainly would like to avoid that. Some of the tools that we have been working on, I'm getting close to my last slide here, so I'll preface again by saying that we developed a lot of these tools over the last 18 months. And in part, it was to make sure we had a lot more information at our fingertips on how we manage our highway system on a day-to-day basis. But one of the key ones that we had been asked about early in the summer and that we went and developed is this next slide here that we're going to be rolling out sometime in the next few weeks. So with remote hybrid, the tools that are out there are not necessarily the same that they used to be, and people's needs are different. And we had been asked a couple of times about what tools are available for people who are trying to plan their workday commute. And we're right now still building this out. It's in a trial test right now. But what you're seeing on your screen is, and if you go to like a Planet Fitness or another gym, you may have seen a chart that's similar to this. We kind of stole that idea. What this shows is the peak travel times. What's the best time to travel for whatever your commute is that you can see at a glance, all right, if I'm going Monday through Friday, I want to go into the office, and I have flexibility, what are the times that I need to avoid to make sure that my commute is going to be the best it can be? And you can start picking, down pretty discreetly down to certain hours about what that right time is for you to go in and leave your house and get there on time. Our goal long-term, again, is to build this out a little bit further. We have some similar tools, but not quite as detailed as this. That we have as part of the Mass 511 website. That website allows you to really look at a lot of different modes of transportation too. So this is specific to highways. At some point, because one of the things that we have right now is a lot of data to use. We'd like to see this built out more for transit as well, so that you can start really making those real-time choices all in one place about when you want to travel and what the best time is to leave. And again, this is really focused towards office workers that have those opportunities to be a little bit more flexible as they can start planning their days. And the way this works is it takes data from the last 3 weeks, it's aggregated, and gives you those average times over that period. All right, and with that, Lori, I'm gonna give my screen back to you guys.
Great, and I think that is my cue. I will now attempt to share my screen, and let's see if the slides advance here. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about a couple topics. I just advanced the slide. I hope you now see an agenda slide. Wonderful. I just want to talk a little bit about ridership, some changes we're making to the fall schedule, and then I think I'll skip the budget unless folks have questions about it, and talk to you a little bit about some of the capital spending, some of the investment and capital spending we're doing in the system. Just to talk a little bit about ridership, this very busy chart here shows you MBTA ridership across the pandemic. And what we've done is we've taken the last full week of February 2020, and we've indexed this chart to 100. So the ridership on that last full week of February is 100. And then basically the percentage of that pre-COVID ridership is what you see represented in the chart here. So what do you see in front of you? You see ridership dropping precipitously in that March 2020 period as the emergency kind of took hold and multiple closures took place. You see in some cases ridership is down in the single digits on a couple modes, particularly bus. You can see it gets down to 20%, but no lower. It then comes back through the spring and the summer. Then as the second wave of COVID hits, you see ridership start dropping again in November 2020 through January 2021. And then as the wave somewhat abates, ridership begins to come back. During that second wave of COVID, you can see it doesn't drop as much as it did during the first wave. And I think that reflects, people's increased knowledge about the pandemic and some of the ways to mitigate it. And then you see it comes back over throughout 2021 to the levels that you see now. Other thing I'll point out to you on this chart, and I think particularly for folks who haven't ridden the T in a while, I think it may come as a surprise how many people are actually riding the T and frankly did throughout the pandemic. You do see that our services sort themselves out roughly into 3 tiers. That top tier, which was the most durable places where ridership was, the yellow line is bus, the gray line is our paratransit service, and the blue line is, as you might expect, the blue line. They're in the top tier, they're the most durable, they're the ones that have come back the most. The next tier are the red, orange, and green line, which have basically gone in lockstep throughout the pandemic. And then below that, you see commuter rail is the purple line, and then the ferry is that dotted blue line. A couple interesting things to note about commuter rail, which I think might be of particular interest to this audience. You can see in December 2020 a sharp drop in commuter rail ridership, and that reflects the fact that we had to go to a very limited schedule because we had a pretty severe COVID outbreak within Keolis, and had limitations on the amount of crew and dispatch we had available to us. Then you see a jump in April 2021 when we instituted new schedules, which we call a regional rail schedule, which rather than building our schedule around a 9 to 5 commuting day, a regional rail schedule has consistent service throughout the service day. And I think this dovetails with what Jonathan was saying about giving people the ability to commute at different times. Now, for instance, the train I typically take, it comes at 25 after the hour, every hour, all day long. Whereas in the past, there might have been gaps of 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the service day when there was no service available. So to take this and talk a little bit more about specific modes, what you see here is nearer term data of what ridership has looked like over the past couple months on the subway system. You can see we're at 47% ridership now for the last week we have available. It's basically last week, the first week in October. One of the other patterns you see here on this chart is, with the exception of one week where we had a weather event on Friday, you can see that actually you see the days of the week, you see a variation, but typically rising ridership throughout the week, with the exception of Thursday. And then Friday is consistently our highest ridership day, which I think is really interesting, because I know when we were talking informally before the meeting, to the extent that people are working less than 5 days a week, typically they're not working Monday and Friday. We certainly see that in lower ridership on Monday. We don't see that on Fridays. And I think, part of that has to do with folks taking more discretionary trips on Friday, but we've seen that as a pronounced pattern. We're also seeing increased ridership on bus. Again, we're up at around 275,000 trips per day. You can see it's been increasing over time. One of the important things to note here is that the numbers we're seeing in terms of bus ridership being at about 65 to 70% in aggregate. it is very variable across our different routes. You can see some of our major routes. The Route 28 bus, which currently has a free fare pilot in place, it's basically a pre-COVID ridership, or within 3 percentage points. Other routes like the SL2 is still less than 50% of pre-COVID ridership. So it's very variable across the system. One place where we are seeing a real uptick in ridership, and if I put them in the lowest tier in on that first chart, but it's really sort of catching up to the second tier now, is commuter rail. We're seeing ridership coming back in a really strong way in commuter rail. You can take a look at this, and the trend is positive here, and also the slope is increasing, right? From August to October, that slope looks a lot different than the April to July slope. So again, pre-COVID was about 120,000 trips per day. We're up to about 50,000 trips per day, but it is a place where we're seeing growth. And in fact, in a couple places where we have added weekend service, we are actually over 100% pre-COVID ridership on the weekends in certain places. So it is reflecting somewhat of a change in ridership from your pure 9 to 5 commuters to folks using the commuter rail either for non-traditional commutes or using them for non-work purposes. Just wanted to give a quick update on some of the changes that we've put in place this fall. We have a promotional campaign, and I'll beg the indulgence of my colleague, Jonathan Gulliver, while we poke a little bit of fun at our friends at Highway here. You can see we have a promotional campaign called Next Time Take the T. This is actually a billboard the T owns at its Albany bus yard. If you look very closely at the right-hand corner, you can see it. It happens to overlook the Southeast Expressway, which Jonathan just shared with us is actually above the pre-COVID congestion levels. So we figured we'd do a little marketing to the folks stuck in traffic. We also have toolkits available on our website so that you can share with your employees the various things that the T is doing. Also, our friends at A Better City have developed a monthly pass break-even calculator, so you can figure out, does it still make sense for you to buy a monthly pass even though you might not be commuting 5 days a week. We also have a pilot product called the 5-day Flex Pass, which allows you to buy 5 one-day passes at a 10% discount that you can then use within a 30-day period. And we're trying to bridge the gap between folks who may have bought a monthly pass previously, now find themselves commuting at a lower rate, but still want some kind of pass product. So I do encourage you to check that out. We do have, as part of our Take the T campaign, we do have an extensive Ride Safer promotion program. These are ads that are in our subway stations and everywhere. We have digital screens that go through what type of ventilation you get on both, in this case, they're on the subway, but we have similar promotional materials for bus as well, talking about how air is circulated. In most cases, the air circulation that you get on the T is superior to that of most of the other enclosed spaces you go to. Think about offices and restaurants. In addition, we do have a mask mandate in place on the T. As a regular T rider, I can say compliance is very good. And again, compliance with the mask mandate on the T, I would say, is far superior to most of the other places where you end up going if you go to the supermarket or restaurant or something like that. So really trying to emphasize the safety of the system. We have these signs up reminding people of the mask mandate as well. And as I said, compliance is pretty good. One thing I just wanted to mention, we do have a free fare pilot in place until November 29th, funded by the City of Boston on the Route 28. So if your travels, this route travels between Ruggles Station and Ashmont. So if you do want to give that a try, it'll be in place till November 29th. Let's see, I was going to talk about the budget, but I think I will skip over. And if we have questions, I'm happy to return to it. I did want to talk briefly about our capital program. And I really want to emphasize the scale and the scope of the investment that we are making in the system. And that includes both two major expansion projects, but also investing in asset replacement and modernization. We are investing at an unprecedented rate in the MBTA, and we have a plan to keep this momentum going for the next 5 years. You can see last year we invested $1.93 billion at the MBTA. That's almost 5 times what we were investing a decade ago. And you really see that step change between 2019 and 2020, and we are pushing to get to $2 billion in this current year. It is an unprecedented level of investment in the MBTA. And I think, it's an important story to get out. I know the T has faced challenges. You've seen it in the press. We are not just talking the talk. This is the walking the walk part of it, where we are actually investing the money in the system. We're going to have to do this for a number of years. It's going to have to be a sustained investment, but we have the funding and the planning in place to do just that. You can see here for FY22, we have over $2.5 billion programmed. Our goal is to get at least $2 billion of this out the door, but this kind of gives you a breakdown of where it is being invested. We've got 2 major expansion projects, South Coast Rail and the Green Line extension, and then we have the rest of it is reliability and modernization. It is investing in the core system to provide a more reliable, more modern system to our customers. Just to walk through a handful of the things we're doing, I talked about the Green Line extension and South Coast Rail. We're also investing in the major investments across the Red and Orange Line, major investments in a new fare system, as well as investing in our bus fleet as well. Just quickly, I'll end with one of the other things we're doing. It's not always about money. It's also about operating more efficiently, operating smarter. We are in the middle of a bus network redesign project designed to redo our bus routes, take a holistic view of our bus system. How can we make these routes more efficient? How can we bring people to the places they want to go? The City of Boston and our entire service area has grown so much over the last 10, 20, 30 years. We've never stepped back to take a look at, okay, what is the bus system we need to serve that? That's something we're going to be doing over the next 2 years. Really would value your engagement in that, value your engagement overall with the T. We've got a bunch of different ways to get involved, both a customer and an employer opinion panel. We have numerous public events. Encourage you to check out mbta.com/events, most of them virtual. So the friction to participate is a little bit less. So would really value your engagement, and I'll stop there. And Jonathan and I think are going to be taking some questions. So thank you for your attention, and happy to talk more about the MBTA.
So far I don't have any questions, but I can ask some questions. As far as the governor's commitment to the Transportation and Climate Initiative, obviously the pandemic had a major impact. Well, I don't know. Did it have a major impact on his goals? Do you think we'll still be able to commit to emissions reductions for transportation? How has it changed the goals of the MBTA ridership? Or did we take it several steps back?
We are, all of our planning is consistent with the governor's goals here. And, I think a big, we're really trying to do the foundational work to position the T to reach those goals. My backdrop here is the Arbor Way bus yard, which is one of the 9 bus yards we are going to need to rebuild. Currently, these buses run on compressed natural gas. We are on a pathway to fully electrify the fleet. To do that, we're going to have to rebuild all of these bus yards in order to accommodate an electrified fleet. So we continue to do all of our planning consistent with the governor's goals.
And that's similar on the highway side and DOT at large too. And certainly, like everybody else, there's been supply chain issues for procuring things like new electric vehicles and such. But we also have a lot of work that we have been doing during that downtime. One of the big ones that we've been touting over the last few months now is MassDOT opened the new Central Mass Transportation Center. which is an office that replaces a lot of our regional offices in that area and consolidates them. It's the largest net zero building east of the Mississippi. So it's a great facility. It's going to really help us move the needle on especially climate resiliency into the future, because it consolidates a lot of our backup areas, some of our critical life safety systems, into a place that is no longer as vulnerable as some of our other ones.
Okay, we have a question from Marissa Fava. She asks, what role did you have as it relates to transportation to schools, especially given the bus driver shortage?
So, Steve, you can probably answer that first. I was going to say it's not me. Steve in the RMV.
It's interesting. We play an integral role in transporting kids to school. We have a wonderful arrangement with the city of Boston. They purchased 30,000 passes from us for students, and that is students, that is school-age children, grades 7 through 12 in the city, and it's for all kids. District, charter, private, parochial, all have MBTA passes. We move about 25,000 kids per day on our system. In Boston, there's a handful of exceptions, but I would say, by and large, there is no yellow school bus service for grades 7 through 12. Those kids get to school on the MBTA. So we play an integral role in the city in doing that. We had a conversation with the city when they were facing a shortage, and they asked us, could we potentially help out? And we aspire to be helpful in these situations. However, we have our own issues in terms of trying to attract as much of a workforce as we can, and we're also transporting roughly the same number of kids in grades 7 through 12 as the city does on their yellow school buses for K through 6. So unfortunately, we weren't able to help out. However, we are obviously an integral partner in getting those kids to school. And I would note, this may be too much information for this audience, but I would note one of the great joys of my life is 2 of my kids ride the MBTA to school, so I get frequent real-time updates. If on the rare occasion that a bus or a train happens to be late or off schedule, I get real-time feedback from actual customers, which of course I value greatly.
Do they sugarcoat it?
No, they do not. And they also, I appreciate their faith in me, but if a bus is stuck in traffic, I have limited ability to do anything about it in the moment. But I do appreciate hearing from them, of course.
We talked a little bit before we got on about what have you noticed about the work week? Are you noticing a 3-day work week? As far as the commute?
Yeah, I know Steve addressed it when he was talking. We are definitely seeing it's at this point, again, I can't stress enough, traffic is very unsettled, but over the last few weeks, there's definitely been an increase on the Tuesday through Thursday timeframe of the week on some key highways. And there's, it varies by region. Like if you look at basically the 3 spokes into Boston being the 93, 95, and the Turnpike. The coming from the north and the south came back fast, the fastest, and they've stayed the steadiest, and actually in some cases exceed. The Turnpike has been an interesting study for us. It's the road that dropped off the sharpest, and it's also the one that has come back the slowest. So it actually has turned into a really good indicator for as far as overall traffic health goes, because we can keep a close eye on what it's doing. And that's the road where we're especially seeing that there's a very clear change in the patterns on a day-to-day basis. And over the last few weeks has been much more of a Tuesday through Thursday kind of commute. That in the North Shore, South Shore, not so much, but the Turnpike coming in from the west and coming in from the North Shore, we've definitely been seeing more of that.
And I think for the T, as we talked about, there's some data that suggests Monday's the lightest, Friday's the heaviest. Again, without a ton of data and analysis, my hunch is there's a lot of discretionary travel on Friday. The other thing we've seen, and it's consistent with what Jonathan shared, is our commute used to be built even not only on commuter rail, but on the subway and somewhat on the bus around a 9 to 5 workday. We would have one clear peak at around 8:15 and then another one at 5:30. And what we're seeing now is the peak is lower, it's broader, and it's earlier. So, and I think what that reflects is fewer 9 to 5 employees traveling, more people with either irregular schedules or 7 to 3 schedules traveling, and then people, again, as Jonathan noted, someone who maybe used to work 9 to 5 is now coming to the office, from 10 to 2, and then they're going home and they're finishing their workday at home. So we're seeing a mix, I would say, but a definite change in the commuting pattern inside a day.
And one thing to add to what Steve said too, he reminded me on discretionary trips. One of the things that we saw jump up early in the pandemic and has kind of stayed with us is these local midday trips. And I think you can attribute that to a lot of if you are working remotely, and you have to run an errand in the middle of the day during your lunch hour, you're doing it. And we're seeing that has impacted a lot of communities, more so even in many respects than pre-pandemic times, that a lot of those downtown areas are just getting congested much earlier in the day. And again, it's that discretionary trips taking that we're seeing a lot more of now than we used to.
It sounds like that 7 to 3 hours for the parents, maybe the parents tag team on who gets the morning drop off and the afternoon pickup. We have a few questions, or a couple questions. Mark Watkins says, great presentation, thank you, lots of good stuff. And clearly you are thinking of creative ways to incent using public transportation. Does the public transport have Wi-Fi?
The commuter rail does. However, bus and subway do not.
And then Dan Ryan asks, anything other than the 5-day pass are they considering to support hybrid work? I think
we're trying to take a look at different options. The constraints we have on us are, one, our back office system is very old. And one of the capital projects I showed you there was fare transformation, which unfortunately is going to take a couple years to fully unspool. So there's limits to what we can do just because we've got a really old back office. The other issue we're grappling with is there are federal regulations which really limit the amount of changes we can make to our fare structure without triggering, I would say, some pretty extraordinary costs on our end. And we're trying to reconcile how can we sort of stay on the right side of these, I think, well-intentioned federal regulations, and give customers what they want. So it is a balance that we're trying to strike right now.
With your Ride the T campaign, are you going to be advertising like the more regular schedules to promote that you can use the T with your new flexible schedules?
I'd say we're more promoting just people to think of the T, right? And we're trying to deliver it in places, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek to do it on the Southeast Expressway, but we do have an extensive network of message boards, many of which are adjacent to highways. So we've been doing it there. We just started a series of ads. When you if you go to certain gas stations, you pump your gas. There's a little screen there with the show. It's now got a message to, hey, why don't you try the T the next time? We are trying to reach people, particularly people who maybe haven't been on the system in a while.
No questions yet, so I'll have to keep coming up with them. There were pre-pandemic, there was talk of putting tolls on the expressway, some types of tolls just to discourage peak ridership, or is that still in the works, or is the pandemic pushed that off?
No, yeah, we have no plans to expand our tolling footprint. I think I think you're probably referring to, there was a number of findings in the congestion report that laid out a lot of different options, and some of them were worth exploring, some of them were not. As far as tolling goes, as far as managed lanes goes, that's something that we did take cursory looks at, but we have no immediate plans. Some of, I think, the things that we're really pushing and trying to get people to do is really, again, I mentioned it before, and Steve and I kid, but it's the truth, is that a healthy T is really good for the transportation system. And despite the fact that he puts up insulting billboards, we want people to be taking the T. And as I remind Steve once in a while, outdoor advertising board actually falls under me, so we might have to take a harder look at that. But seriously, things like adding in bus on shoulder, adding express entrances for the Silver Line, those are things that are really helpful, that we are looking at doing if we haven't done so already, and really expanding. We want that system to be reliable. We want it to be consistent for people, and we want them to have those choices so that they're not on the highway, because there's a lot of people that need to be on the highway, and that they for whatever reason, whether their job or where they live, it requires them to be. We want to make sure that their commute is and congestion for them is reduced as much as possible.
I'm struggling to fill the time. What has been the biggest challenge that the pandemic has caused for your departments?
For highway, it is definitely one of the unintended consequences of having lesser traffic that has stuck with us is our fatality rate on the highways doubled during the last year and a half. And that's attributed predominantly to speed and distracted driving. We rolled out a campaign just before the pandemic hit it's now illegal to use a cell phone in your car in any other way other than by Bluetooth right now. So you can't hold it, you can't touch it. It's supposed to be hands off. And unfortunately, the timing of that being rolled out, we saw a good reaction initially, but then as traffic reduced and people started coming back on the roads, the speeds increased dramatically. And if you're out there right now, you see it every day that people are going much faster than they should. You combine that with distracted driving, using a cell phone or whatever in your car, it has really had some deadly consequences. And our rate has gone way up, unfortunately. Like I said, it had doubled for a period. It's a little bit down from there, but it's not where we want it to be. So that's been a big consequence, and it's something we're really trying to reverse.
Yeah, I think, for us in terms of I think the initial challenge for us was ensuring that our workforce and customers were safe. And, I think as our knowledge of COVID progressed, we have a very aggressive set of cleaning protocols that continue to be in place. Initially, we struggled, as everyone did, to acquire enough PPE. I think that was another challenge, and get that in the hands of the workforce. We were able to do that, but it was, in those early days, March and April, it was very much ad hoc. At one point we got into, we had our highly skilled bus mechanics filling. We weren't able to buy little bottles of hand sanitizer. We were able to buy 256-gallon drums of hand sanitizer, and we went out and bought thousands of little bottles and made labels for them. And then we had our highly skilled bus mechanics filling these, dainty little bottles, assembly line style, so that we could give them to our employees. And, I think it's reflective of, not only of the T, but how everyone has been forced to be resourceful in these circumstances. So, I would say initially that was the biggest challenge. I would say now our biggest challenge is probably, like many industries, we are facing challenges in the workforce. So just getting enough people hired up to do the work that needs to be done, we are struggling like many other places to hire up. Right now, the T has an open call. Anyone on this call who has a CDL and would like to drive a bus for the T or operate a train, please go to mbta.com and apply. We are hiring.
And Lori, if I could add to that, we also have a huge hiring crunch going on as well. The infrastructure bill that's pending in Congress right now that is hopefully going to get passed by the end of this month or early next month, that is going to increase our capital program by more than 50%. So we are right now anticipating a massive influx of capital spending. Our program is going to jump to about a typical year right now for us is about 1.2, could become 1.7 billion. And if that happens, we're going to have to increase our staffing appropriately. One of the big things that we're doing to try to attract people, I should add, is that being a statewide entity, we don't have to require everybody to come into Boston anymore, especially with remote work. You know, the old, even during our congestion study, we looked at 45 minutes away from the workplace was like the magic radius that you needed to live. And that's where most congestion occurred. We don't have that anymore. You know, I think in this new work environment after the pandemic, we have people right now who live in the Berkshires, but their job is based in Boston. They remote in for the majority of the week and then drive in once a week or once every couple of weeks to have those in-person meetings. And that's an initiative that the governor is doing across the board in state government, is trying to reduce the footprint of government down quite a bit. It's something that we've spent a lot of time on this past year. We're not done yet, but we've been reducing, just as an example, at the highway division, we had 3 floors of 10 Park Plaza, and we're compressing that down to a single floor. So the idea would be that on any given day, only about a third of our staff would be in the office. A third of our prior staff would be in the office at any given time. So there's a lot going on in that respect too, trying to navigate the new work world, make sure that we can attract the people we need and still get the job done.
I think everyone's struggling with finding help. Mark Watkins had another question on the cell phones. He said it's an excellent point. Is anything being done to reduce this risky behavior?
Yeah, I think it is a huge problem still. We actually had an event with AAA yesterday that included state police, other local law enforcement advocates, and others, and all of us collectively. It was a media event. You know, it's hard sometimes to get traction on this stuff, but we really try to impress upon people on a regular basis that, hey, it's a law. You got to put your cell phone down. State police have stepped up enforcement, like everything else during the pandemic. There was a drop off, but they have been stepping it up considerably over the course of the summer into the fall. So that will help. But again, this is one of these. This is a real. It's a frustrating part of the job, is when you do have to deal with distracted driving that leads to fatality. So it's something that is really, really important to us, and we've been trying to push it as much as we can.
Well, thank you so much. Are there no more questions? And unless you can think of something, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Administrator Gulliver and Jan Poptak, for joining us today. And good luck with all your endeavors. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks so
much.
much.
Thank you for having us.